Studios, the ausbiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Well, hello, welcome to the COB. I'm Danny Akuye.
And I'm Juliette Sali. On what has been a bit of a lackluster day's trade, we tried to see a bit of a gain coming through from some of those miners, but I don't think we got up there, did we?
No, I currently have the ASX 200. It's down around 11 points or 0.16%, and the CIBO 200 down by 1.6 points or 0.12%. So a bit of a fizzler, but I guess we should say maybe it didn't fizzle down too much, so it's not too bad.
Indeed. Let's have a look at, of course, what we've been focusing in on really was about Nvidia's numbers, you know, blowing it out of the park with those third quarter numbers. 14.5 billion out of the 18 billion in revenue from AI.
I know.
Less than 2 years ago, the majority of their revenue came from computer games or
exactly.
GPUs. Yeah, it's
Gaming.
incredible.
It is incredible, and I guess that everybody is going to say, well, that was great, that was kind of expected.
But the outlook?
Well, no, I think the outlook's all right. I just think, you know, there's just so much discounted in that share price. It's really hard, and people will, you're right, focus on the fact like they have been growing so dramatically that rate of growth is not going to be sustained
potentially. Yeah.
But I'm just curious. I mean, I find it interesting that it's trading on around 38 times prospective earnings, but you know, really in the whole scheme of things with that much growth, I don't think it seems that much, but hey ho, I'm not an analyst.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact when I say outlook, they did talk about being worried about Israel. They've got something like 3,500 employees there, and they talked about China as well, and the fact that sales look to be a little bit down.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's not down. They're not allowed to export there anymore, so there's been trade bans put on there. But that's again well flagged in the market. I just think the share price had rallied so high. But hey, we spoke with Dan Ives today, so you can check out that interview because of course he is all across the godfather of AI. But we also
gold
glistening today. It went over $2,000 an ounce, Jules. I think you had a deep dive today on gold.
I had a deep dive with Barry Dawes, and he's he's a big gold bug, shall we say. And Tony Sycamore from IG on the Trade as well. You can catch both those interviews, of course, on ausbiz online. But Tony Sycamore from the Trade also talking about, you know, once we sort of breach closer towards 2010, then maybe we see a real breakout for gold as well. So 2007 it got to in the overnight session before closing around 2001. And then Lovisa, I mean, they call it a teen jewellery retailer. I dislike that. I mean, I don't mind a bit of Lovisa for some fun jewellery or Christmas season, Christmas earrings.
A bit of bling, but let's face it, it's positioned to be highly affordable, and one would have thought quite, I suppose, recession slowdown proof because it is a very, you know, good price point. But it was just interesting that at their AGM, their like-for-like comparable store sales were actually down for the first 20 weeks of the full year 24, the current start of this year, by about 6%. So sales are still growing because they're adding in more stores. But the market, look, it started off by selling it down, but look, it's ended up flat on the day.
Yeah, and I was talking to scratch my brain now, Scott Phillips from Motley Fool about this stock, because he was saying, you know, in terms of you saying recession proof, it's not like people that generally shop at Lovisa in terms of that teen market would have mortgages, so they're not being hit by the higher interest rates and they're still cutting back. So obviously just an interesting point to make there in terms of the slowdown.
Yeah, absolutely, and we probably can expect more of that. So maybe we should have a look at some corporate news, because there was quite a bit out today, wasn't there,
I think
Jules?
we're just going to quickly go through the sectors.
Jumping ahead.
Yeah, gold, we touched on. Newmont there was up by 2.1%. On the close, they were all higher really, apart from Northern Star.
Yeah, and let's have a look at the metals and mining stocks, and we can see BHP is actually at a 6-month high, up 41 cents or 0.9% to $47.86. Had a great conversation with the guru of global liquidity, Michael Howell, today, and he really pinpointed why we're seeing the rally in iron ore prices, because the PBOC is pumped in about $500 billion US, and it's very much much flowing in his analysis into the likes of iron ore prices. But you can see there across the board gains, albeit more for BHP and South 32 than Fortescue and Rio.
Yeah, let's have a look at utilities. This was a good sector actually because well, AGL was down there on its AGM, but Origin was rising ahead of the result of the shareholder vote on the buyout, which doesn't look like it's going to get the go-ahead. But I think overlooking at the overall broader utility sector, it was one that actually stood out today. So that's not really showing us the correct picture there with some of those stocks. But utilities were up by 0.8%, which we will take in a down market.
Absolutely. I'm just checking. Origin looks like it was up by about 1.3% to $8.38. Now, I got ahead of myself. We might check in with some of those corporate stories that were out today. And one that I just wanted to highlight, it's not there, but last time I checked, it was off, Praemium was off about 31%.
I think it's going to be on the next one. So we'll go through these ones first.
Oh,
there
sorry.
we are.
Off 34%. And that's largely due to a very weak outlook for the first half of 24.
All right, Healius completing a $154 capital raising, so it of course was hit as it fell down, and then Bub's in a trading halt. It's tapping the market to fund its US expansion. Let's go back to the first screen though and go through some of those because of course Webjet was in focus with its AGM posting a first half full year 24 revenue up 39%, and it did say that earnings are expected to significantly exceed pre-pandemic levels, and that's kind of similar to what we were talking about in the travel industry yesterday, Danny.
Absolutely, and I was thinking about this, dare I say, I was thinking, my gosh, a lot of the retirees are likely to keep on travelling because they're debt-free, they're drawing down their retirement savings, they're earning more, higher interest on their cash deposits. So even if the younger generation don't keep on YOLOing, you can actually see the retirees doing the YOLO travel at the moment. I think
that's why the likes of Hello World have so many upgrades too, because they're more likely to use a service like that too. Yeah,
and just having a look at Santos, they have cut their production forecast for fiscal 24, and we touched on Lovisa, which said total sales for the first 20 weeks of full year 24 are up 17% on the previous period. Yes, comparable same-store sales were down 6.2% year to date.
Yes, okay, a quick look at Medibank. They said no change to their full year 24 outlook, and then EBOS shares coming under pressure, down 6%. They pulled the pin on their speculated near $2.5 billion Green Cross takeover.
And let's move to the stock of the day, which was Webjet. And we had a guest, Michael Wayne from Medallion Financial, and Sean Cartwright from Anadara Asset Management. And let's listen to them, see what they had to say.
Webjet, I think the performance on the market today is reflective of how the market views this thing, which is fully valued. I've got a corporate account with a few of the airlines, and the discounts they offer exceed those that you can get through these large travel providers if you spend enough on travel. Again, I think the airlines are doing a good enough job at getting a slice of the corporate travel, and I think based on the sort of discounts that I'm seeing, I think it's going to be really hard for Webjet and Flight Centre to continue to win that those corporate accounts.
I think the market might be a little bit disappointed that the dividend wasn't reinstated, and although they came out with very strong guidance in terms of growth numbers, they were actually a bit below a lot of the analysts in the market, and that also might be disappointing people a little bit. So it's probably one we'll have a good review of and then make a decision on. But given it's only a small position in the fund, we've been tempted to hold it just to ride it out. It's not overly expensive by any means. However, there are mounting challenges starting to emerge, definitely in that consumer space.
Today, Webjet. And now let's welcome to the COB Rocco Panzerino from Macro Capital, who joins us here in the studio. The macroeconomic conditions around agriculture we're looking at, just as we're starting to hopefully see a bit of a calming after El Nino and La Nina.
Yes, it's definitely been a sector that's been out of love quite a fair bit recently, and a lot of it's got to do with the underlying commodity prices within agriculture. We've got cattle prices fallen more than 70% over the last 12 months, sheep prices as well, around the 75% mark. It's even got to a point where some farmers are even giving sheep away.
Wow.
Because it's not viable for them to eat all the feed and for them to keep for such a low price.
So have they been dumping stock on the market due to the drought? Is that what they've so basically been destocking, or what's going on?
It's somewhat to do with the drought, but it's also got a lot to do with the supply. We've actually got about 3 times the amount of sheep than people in this country at the moment. About 80 million sheep in Australia.
Right.
So a large supply, therefore we've seen the prices go down quite substantially recently. To put that into perspective as well, a steer at the moment, a 300 kilo steer, is valued at about $600. A sustainable price for a steer of that size is about $1,700, considering all the inputs. And around this time last year, they were going for about $2,100.
Yeah.
So it's definitely put a strain on the sector, and we've seen that with some of the share prices of companies like Elders and like GrainCorp as investors are pricing all of that in. In the US as well, we've got winter coming up, and February is generally a crucial month for agriculture because you've got extreme weather conditions, high precipitation, and during that period of time as well, you've got generally cattle prices or stock cattle decreasing their fat, trying to stay warm for the winter. Which is a good thing for Australian cattle because generally our exports increase during that period of time as well. We've also got things like the Australian dollar. It's been on a sustained downtrend for a couple of years now. This somewhat does favour Australia and their exports for these sorts of goods for overseas countries. So a few things at play at the moment.
So that beef that you're referring to, is that processed here in Australia and then exported to the US? I
Yeah,
think it is,
correct.
isn't
Yeah,
it?
the steer's about a middle-aged male cow.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Investment opportunities. You mentioned Elders there. I actually spoke to the CEO a couple of weeks ago. He was talking about how it's really hard to get talent. I think we discussed that earlier, but you're seeing that being impacted. Any potential good opportunities here?
Yeah, well, I think that we have equity markets forward-looking, and we've got a lot of negativity priced into these stocks at the moment. A lot of analysts and a lot of investors have been quite pessimistic on the sector. But nonetheless, I think that does create some opportunity as well. But you have to be very careful and very responsible when adding these to the portfolio because they are so cyclical. But as you mentioned, Elders, Mark Allison has done a really good job in diversifying that business and making them less susceptible to the cyclical nature of the sector. So yeah, it's something that you can look at these levels. I'm quite impressed with Elders on the back of their report actually because they've held up quite well. They went ex-dividend yesterday and have held those levels for a few days where often you see the stock decline after something like that, and whilst it's trending around that resistance level, it's something you have to approach with extreme caution.
What about Ingham's? Because that one's been doing quite well.
Yeah, look, it is something that we do take a look at, but we'd be more looking at the Elders, the GrainCorps of the sector. They're looking to, as I said before, diversify their business. Elders, GrainCorp as well have come out with the results recently. We've got these companies reporting off cycle. We don't see too much news out of these companies throughout the year. They do report off cycle. They have just reported now. We won't see anything till about May next year. So when looking to get an allocation into these companies, more for the portfolio management aspect side of things, you look to get it in allocations. Maybe break it up into 3 or 4, just with the uncertainty around everything at the moment. But as we said before, when the times are like this, it does create some opportunity, but for the long run.
It's interesting because they called an El Nino, yet we actually are having some rain, which would be pretty positive for the likes of GrainCorp, I would have thought.
Yeah, rain for the next 2 weeks.
Apparently. Well, we don't want, that's the thing, you want rain, but you don't want too much rain.
Yeah.
It's such a...
I'd take rain over bushfire season, to be honest.
I know, it's so hard though, because you watch all those people in the floods as well, and there's more
true.
floods, so you always
Yeah.
forget about those. We think, yes, nice rain.
Yeah. El Nino's, it's highly likely, especially for the east coast of Australia. Farmers at the moment, specifically in central west New South Wales, are looking to start to put in their summer crops. They're quite pessimistic about this season. They're being fairly conservative about their crops because it is expected to be poor, and that's just largely in the short term. And I was speaking to a couple of farmers actually, and they tell me that historically over time, when you do have 3 good seasons in a row, like we have had, typically
Next one goes a bit pear-shaped.
Next one goes bad, and it could stay around for up to 5 years. So a lot of farmers are being quite pessimistic at the moment.
Wow, there you go. And also Brazil had its hottest day on record recently, and Dubai is underwater.
What?
Yep.
I did see that.
Missed that. Oh my goodness.
Dubai's underwater. Anyway.
Oh, all right.
On that note, Rocco, thank you so much for joining ausbiz today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Rocco Panzarino from Macro Capital. Let's have a look at the after-close market leaders. De Grey Mining up by 4%. Bellevue Gold up more than 3%, as is Karoon Energy.
Yeah, they like that acquisition that they've done and the cap raising.
Link Administration up 2.75%, QBE Insurance rounding it up by a 2.4% gain.
Yeah, now let's have a look at some of the laggards, and there we go. Healius down by 27%. They're having that placement. Polynovo off 7%. Liontown and Sayona off by 5%. And Life 360. There's actually been quite a bit of profit taking coming into that one recently. Was there any news?
No, but I think Weebit Nano was another one that fell something like 6%. So quite a few big drops coming through. Healius, of course, is that huge one on the capital raising. Let's have a look at some of the small caps.
Yeah, and 4D Medical continuing to do well off the back of their announcement, I think, yesterday. And we do have an interview with them tomorrow, so you'll have to look out for that one, up 19%. Strickland Metals up about 16. Bone Coal also very strong, up 13. AIC Mines up 11, and Playside Studios. I was chatting about that the other day actually.
What are they?
They do gaming.
Oh.
Yeah, and quite a few brokers actually like that one. It was on the call. I had it on the call.
Okay.
So that's up by almost 10%.
All right, let's have a look at the laggards. We've discussed Praemium, the wealth management firm, down 35%. 40S Memory down 12.4%. Jevois Global, Avita Medical. Iona also not doing very well today.
We need Kyle here, because he always used to go Je vois global. He
Did
always
he?
used to, yes, we used to go on about that one. It's a bit silly, really. Okay, let's check in and see what is happening overnight.
Well, also we should point out that Michelle Bullock is going to talk at 7:35, so that is in about 3 hours' time.
I'm getting confused. She was quoted this morning in the papers too.
She spoke yesterday, but she's also speaking at an event tonight.
Yeah. She's a busy
She's
bee.
a busy bee. US durable goods orders. She's talking almost as much as we are. US Michigan Consumer Confidence Index, the ECB Financial Stability Review, US jobless claims, and the UK autumn forecast statement. That's an interesting one.
Absolutely. And let's have a look at what's coming up tomorrow. And we have third quarter retail sales for New Zealand. Japanese CPI, that will be interesting to see what's whether that ticks up anymore. Germany IFO investor confidence, also global flash PMI estimates, and ECB monetary policy meeting accounts.
And that's called EFO for some reason. It's the EFO investor confidence. I have no idea why, but a bit like Je vois global, I guess. All right, let's have a look at the market close. We are pretty flat. Should we have bothered coming in, Danny? I'm kidding. Of course we should have. Some people would have made a lot of money today on those gold players.
Absolutely.
But the ASX at 7,073, I think.
Yep, absolutely, down around 5 points. Wow, we've had a great day, haven't we, Jules? Lots of excellent interviews. What's a couple of your favourites today?
Oh, I hate it when you put me on the spot like that. You know who I really enjoyed speaking to is Gary Ng from Natixis about the overall China property space. But there were many, many good interviews that are on ausbiz.com.au.
Absolutely. And also check out, I've just played out Michael Howell's interview, which is always, I think, incredibly interesting.
And you had Dan Ives as well.
And I had Dan Ives. Yeah, we actually talked everything from Nvidia to Microsoft to VinFast, and I believe in your former
career, I have interviewed the CEO of VinFast. That was during COVID years, so I did it over Zoom. She was obviously in Hanoi and I was in Singapore. And we did a Zoom interview, but that's a fascinating story, isn't it? VinFast?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we're talking EVs out of Vietnam, and it is listed in the US for those of you that are interested. Anyway, lots to catch up with on the website. Otherwise, we'll be back. Oh, actually, you'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back on Friday.
Yeah, have a good
because we've got the
sleep.
last call, don't
we? Do, the last call. All right, but today, that is the last call for Wednesday.
That's the last call for us at the moment.
November.
Have a great evening. See you tomorrow.
See you.